Hey everybody, welcome. Hope you're having a wonderful, wealthy, winning Wednesday today. Go ahead and type in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from, and then we'll put our slides up and we'll get started. We have a great topic for you today. We've been talking about recruiting agents. Now we're going to talk about what happens when you unrecruit them. In other words, termination, whether they leave or you kick them out or allow them to go on to greener pastures. We're going to talk about how to evaluate when you need to do that, how to make it happen, what you need during the process to support that decision, and then also what happens afterwards. All right, so welcome everybody. Okay, dokie. All right, there we go. Recruit and retain top talent. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Give everybody a minute to let us know where they're joining us from. And I'm just taking a couple of notes here of things I suddenly thought of. Alrighty. All right. I don't see anybody typing into the chat bar where you're from, but if you get a minute, if you could please do that, that'd be great so we could welcome you. I know some of you are driving and you're just listening, on your phone or watching, as you're doing other important tasks at your brokerage. So I thank you for taking time out of your day to work on your company today. That's really awesome. We're going to keep going here. Welcome, brokers. Who's ready to hit a grand slam? Woohoo! Hit it out of the park. Today is another one of our awesome masterclass series. We already have 3. We have Scale Up Your Brokerage, which is all about your brokerage empire. We have Drive Profits to the Max, which is accelerating and pushing the needle. We have Be the Boss and Dominate Your Market. And then today's series is all about recruiting and retaining the best agents. Don't just play the game, change it. That's what we're going to do today. Change the game of real estate brokerages. And you know all about us now at MBA Broker Consultants. We help you elevate your business and grow to the next level. And also, agent recruiting is this topic. We've gone through all the different phases from starting out with the culture, the compensation, the training, the marketing, the recruiting, and onboarding, production, retention, promotion. And now we're at module number 10, which is, as we know in baseball, there's only 9 innings, unless you have to go into overtime. So we're sort of in that overtime, but we've said game over, agent termination. So that's our 10th module today. And you know all about me, so I won't take time to introduce myself again. Module 10, agent termination. All right, so we have 4 things we're going to review today, or should I say learn about in agent termination. So the first is disciplinary action, and we'll have a little elevation chart for you. We'll actually have 6 of them. We'll talk about the termination forms and going through the process. We'll show you a sample exit interview and talk about what happens after the separation. How do you wrap things up and keep going without getting discouraged? All right, so we're in module 10. I'll put the activity workbook up for you. All right, I went ahead and shared the activity workbook for today's session. It is the 10th workbook. And so now you should have a complete workbook where you can put all of them together. You can put them in a binder if you like, take some time to review it, learn, and sharpen your skills as you go along. This topic, our first section in this topic, is all about disciplinary action. And there's a question mark after the word action, or should I say after that phrase. The reason is because, is this something you want to do or not? How do you determine what type of action to take for a particular agent? So let's start with a little poll here. And our poll is going to be, what is the primary reason you fire agents? Okay, so is it lack of production? That's A. B, paying their fees late, or C, value misalignment. So A is lack of production, and we know that many brokerage owners or many brokerage firms have a policy where there's a minimum number of sales. And we talked about that in the retention and doing our statistics, looking at the production. So if an agent hasn't met that, say it's, 2 per month or 2 per quarter or, 3 a year or whatever it is, if an agent hasn't met that, then you could let them go. And I suggest sort of cleaning house on a regular basis, going through and evaluating your agent's production and then letting those go on a regular basis so they know that they have to work hard to meet your company goals. The second one is B, which is paying your fees late. And what that refers to is, say, for example, your company is a flat fee brokerage and you have a monthly fee due, or even if you're a commission split business model and you have a monthly desk fee or office fee or something, and that is consistently paid late or not at all. There's also been situations where agents owe money and they haven't paid back. For example, the brokerage will say, okay, we're going to go ahead and front some fees for you. We'll go ahead and pay your MLS and your realtor fees so you can join us, but you need to pay us back within 3 months or 6 months. And that time comes, the agent still hasn't had any sales. So that could be a reason to let agents go, is if they're continuing to owe money that's not being paid and it looks like it's never going to be paid. And C is a value misalignment. Now, I'll give you a little hint about value misalignment. That is the number one reason that we let agents go, because it means that whether they have a bad attitude, their behavior is borderline unethical, they've had a complaint filed against them at the Realtor Association, they're having arguments with other agents at the office, you're getting calls and complaints about them from other brokers. I lump that all in the category of value misalignment. In other words, they don't share the same values that you share as a brokerage. Your values are excellent service and cooperation and collaboration and integrity and honesty. And if they're having that type of bad behavior, then they're not demonstrating that they agree with and will abide by your values at your company, right? So go ahead and answer what you think the top answer is for your brokerage. I'll give you 1 minute for that. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next thing here. So why do agents leave? Okay, so there basically are 2 reasons that agents leave, and we'll go into a little more detail in just a minute. But the first reason is they're terminated by the brokerage. Okay, so if they're terminated by the brokerage, it means you have made a decision internally that this agent does not fit your company for whatever reason, and then you decide that you're going to fire them. I wouldn't even use the word fire if they're independent contract, that you're going to just terminate their contract or end their contract, right? Another reason is the agent resigns. If the agent resigns, then they have made the decision that they're not aligning or believing in your company's mission. So they no longer believe in your mission and your vision, or they feel that there are other brokerage out there that suit their needs better. So in that case, the agent makes a decision on his or her own behalf to resign. And again, I would call that just a termination of a contract, right? Because they're independent contractors. Another reason that agents could leave, I mean, sort of technically, but the brokerage could go out of business or lose its license or, lose its office. I've had some agents tell me about that, where their brokerage wasn't paying the rent at their office and they got evicted from their office. So, there are other reasons, but today we're going to really focus on the brokerage termination. So that will be our topic today. Let's talk about something called the breakage rate. And you see it on the slide here, there's a little heart breaking. And that's sort of our agents leaving us. They break our heart when they leave on their own. Because if they were great agents, we probably would have wanted to keep them. But when a brokerage sells or merges, or when there's any type of major change or disruption in the everyday business, or maybe there's not one major change, but several small changes into them that compounds into a big change for them. So when that happens, agents will leave. It's human nature, right? People don't always adjust well to the change, or maybe the change isn't what they thought it would be, and that's just a reason for people to leave. So when a brokerage sells or merges with another brokerage, some agents will leave. And that's already part of the calculation that we do when we decide to sell, acquire, or merge with a brokerage. And we call that breakage rate. Okay, so the industry breakage rate, I'm going to say it's about 15%. But unfortunately, it could be higher. And you will see, unless you do a lot of really great work with the agents ahead of time and preparing them for the change, helping them transition, getting their buy-in, if you don't do that, many of them will leave on their own, and they'll probably leave in groups because they're busy talking to each other and venting and, sharing their feelings with each other, and then they all decide to leave at once. So you could have a situation where as many as 50% of your agents could leave if you merge with another company. That is something to keep in mind if you're trying to grow your brokerage through expansion with another, acquiring another brokerage and bringing it in under your firm. Well, what could happen there is you think you're going to be acquiring, 20 really great agents, and really you essentially only get 10 or 15 agents that come over. So that's something to think about too. So what are the reasons that you as a brokerage would terminate your agents? We saw that before. Lack of production. Every brokerage has certain standards. If your agents aren't meeting that standard, guess what? They're costing you money instead of contributing to the company. And your goal is to have the agents contribute with their production that they can help add to the bottom line, the profitability of your company. Another one is late payment of fees. If they're always paying their fees late to their realtor dues, their MLS dues, their office fees, then it could be a lot of paperwork, or should I say hassle of chasing them around, getting money. So that's something to think about as well. Another reason that an agent might be terminated by you would be a breach of liability. For example, an ethics complaint that's filed at a realtor association that puts your company in jeopardy, a lawsuit that where you have to pull out your E&O insurance and pay money, and it could be a huge headache that causes you a lot of stress. So that those could be reasons as well. And the last on our list is a bad attitude. A bad attitude, right? We call that a value misalignment. Somebody who's argumentative, stubborn, obstinate. Somebody who is always getting into feuds with your other agent, backbiting, gossiping, starting rumors with your other agents or other agents in the industry. Somebody that your agents at your company are coming to you and constantly complaining about this person's behavior. You might want to look at termination as a way to rid your office from the bad apples. So now let's talk about how to avoid these bad apples. And as we know, one rotten apple spoils the entire barrel if you leave it in the barrel long enough. So you're not going to leave them in the barrel. You're going to make sure that you take the rotten apple out before it starts rotting the other apples around it. Now, before you remove somebody that you think is a bad apple, I think it's important to determine, is that person toxic with their attitude? Are they poisoning others? Or is that person just having a bad day? It would behoove us as brokerage owners, as leaders, mentors, to reach out to that person, contact them, and find out what's going on in their life. Maybe they had a death in the family. Maybe they're depressed about 5 escrows that got canceled instead of closing on the same month. Maybe they're dealing with some health issues or a divorce with a spouse. So whatever it is, we don't know what's going on in that person's life, and we need to reach out to that person and find out what their situation is before we just assume that they're a toxic bad apple, creating a bad environment there. And then once we find out what's going on, maybe we can offer to help, send them to the correct resources, or maybe they do need to take a little time off of work just to deal with these issues in their life. Now, the next is positive versus negative oriented people. Now, a lot of us, we're on social media and we see all those positive people that always have something great to say and they make us feel good. But some people are just wired to be positive, and other people are sort of wired to be negative, or they've developed that habit over time. So if a person is negatively oriented, everything they say is perceived as negative. And maybe we shouldn't take it as negative because that's just how they perceive the world. Or B, maybe they need to undergo a little bit of training or counseling or some type of coaching to help change that mindset. So again, before we just, throw the bad apples out of the barrel, let's do a little investigation. Slice open the apple, find out what's going on, and see if we can mend that apple. Okay, the next is conflicts cause, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. We do see this in the real estate industry quite often, that there are agents who seem to be pot stirrers, as you may call it, or, they just like to cause drama. And so I think drama is a pretty big word that we use loosely in our real estate industry, but there are a lot of causes for that. And the main thing I would say, it sort of stems back to people who always like to stir things up and cause conflicts. And if that's the person that's causing you to lose sleep at night, it's better to let them go, let them find greener pastures elsewhere. Obviously, you're not the right fit for them, and you keeping them on doesn't help you or them. So it's better to just let them go, and your void of a missing agent will soon be filled by another great agent whom you wouldn't have found if it weren't for that agent leaving. All right, so let's go on and talk a little bit about conflict resolution. Now, as we know, we as the brokers, we often are in the position of resolving complaints, crises, conflicts, and there are many situations that we find ourselves in. As a matter of fact, that's sort of part of our, management hat that we wear, is that we manage our agents and their situations that come up. I mean, that is what they look to us for, right? To resolve problems. And what is that saying? You get paid by the size of the problems you solve. So the bigger the problem that you solve, the more you're going to get paid, in theory. And dealing with people problems is a very unique, sticky, tricky area. And I suggest that you train managers at your company to help you deal with this and to be the first level of elevation that these agents can go to resolve conflicts with each other. And believe me, there will be conflicts within your brokerage and outside of your brokerage with other agents. Even if you only hire nice agents at your company, guess what? There's 5 other brokerages down the street, and they have agents who might be nasty, mean, disrespectful, aggressive, and unethical. So you can't always control those conflicts because sometimes they happen outside of our brokerage. But what you can do is be proactive in resolving them. Now, one thing I've noticed, there are a lot of areas of potential conflict. In our little illustration here, we have our team members. Let me turn on my whiteboard. I'm going to use a little red marker here. Okay. All right, so we have our team members. So our team members are sort of like, I call them roads or streets or lanes, and they run back and forth this way, right? Horizontally. And then we have issues, tasks, or topics. And I'll say that they are also lanes down here, and they run back and forth horizontally. And the reason that they don't touch each other or conflict with each other is because your team has been working together for a long time. They have a certain way of dealing with issues, dealing with tasks, dealing with topics, and everybody's sort of in their lane, as you would call it, and they're working things out, and everything is going according to your procedures or your protocol at your company. Now what happens when you bring on new team members? They are not acclimated to your company culture and your procedures and your protocol, and they have their own way of doing things. So they are, I call these lanes, that are going to now run vertical. So each one of these new team members is a lane that has potential conflict with this team member, with this team member, with this team member, and they have potential conflict with this issue, this task, this one. So there's a lot of areas of potential conflict for each new team member or agent that you bring in. And same thing with new issues. So you have a change. You're going to have a new software rollout. Woohoo, you're so excited, it's going to make your life easier. But remember, that new software rollout will be somewhat of a change to this team member and this team member and this team member, and a potential for conflict with each of them. And with this task that you do now, it's going to have to change. And with this procedure, now that's going to have to change. So every new person we bring on, every new issue, new task, change represents a potential conflict. So just keep that in mind. Now, conflict is not bad. Conflict can be good. Change can be good. It's not that they happen, it's how we deal with them that matters. Okay, so I hope that helped you a little bit understand how conflicts happen, why, and now let's talk a little bit about the reason or the the behind the scenes, I guess. So when changes happen, it takes people a little while to deal with change, especially when you're bringing on new people. I would say it takes about 6 months for people to adjust to changes. And that is just a normal, natural human adjustment period. So if you have a great team of agents, they've been working together faithfully and collaborating for 3 years together, all of a sudden you bring a new agent in, don't expect them to just welcome that agent with open arms. Know that there might be a little bit of a rocky road, a little rough patch as they get adjusted to each other's habits and styles and communication and work ethics and those types of things, and just their attitude, their persona. So it takes people a little while to adjust, and you can expect that. Now, if you're the type of brokerage that you're bringing on agents every month, woohoo, good for you. That's awesome. And you probably have change as part of your culture. In other words, those of us, we've had the same team for 3 years, nobody's come or left. We have a certain culture that's developed, and it's sort of a clique or inclusive, right? Or I should say, I guess it's exclusive to everybody that's not in our team. But now if we have a culture where every month we're bringing on 3 new agents, 4 new agents, everybody's used to that change, and that is part of the culture, is that there's an air of newness and a fresh approach, constantly happening, and you're constantly shifting to adjust to that, and people are prepared for the change. So I hope that explains it a little bit. Now let's look at the conflict resolution process. We have 6 different samples we're going to go over, and what I call this is the elevation procedures. So you as a brokerage owner, you have certain procedures that you want to follow when situations happen, challenges, difficulties, problems, whatever it is, conflicts. And you also need to advise your agents on the best way that they need to resolve it as well. So let's start by taking a look here. So the first situation is co-op agent versus agent. So this is an agent in your brokerage who's having a conflict with another agent on the other side of their transaction. So say, for example, your agent is the listing agent, and your listing agent, you're the listing brokerage essentially. And there's another agent, the buyer's agent, who represents the buyer, and those 2 agents are having a conflict. How do you resolve that? What do you do, right? So we're going to start right here. And let's see, get a little pin back. We're going to use a purple pin. So it starts right here with your agent. What is the first thing your agent should do when they encounter that type of conflict? The first thing they should do, you can see the number 1 here, they should go to the other agent and talk to them directly. And I'm not talking about email or text message. Call them on the phone and or make an appointment to meet them in person. Talk person to person, not using electronic means. Go to that person with a great attitude, see if you can resolve it. It doesn't get resolved, or the agent refuses to answer. Then number 2, that agent should go to their broker. That's you. Okay? And you try to resolve it with your agent, but if you're not able to, the next step is number 3, you call their broker. Okay? So it should be broker to broker when there's a complaint that needs to be resolved. And your agent at your company should not be calling another agent's broker. They should be calling you, and you should be making that call to the other broker. So that's step 3. Now, after you've talked with their broker, or if their broker continues to ignore your calls and your request for help, your next step is to go to your attorney. That's step number 4. Your attorney will give you legal advice and write a letter to the other broker. Now, let's hope that at some point this gets resolved. But if not, we'll continue elevating it, and then we go to our realtor association. That's when we can file an ethics complaint for legal issues, commission dispute, or a license violation. Now, based on that, if that still does not resolve it, or the realtor association refuses to handle the issue because it's outside of their, area that they review, the next step, you would have your choice. You could either file a claim in civil court, go to mediation or arbitration, and that would be if it's a legal issue or a commission dispute, or if it's a license violation, you would actually go to the state real estate licensing department. Okay. Now, if that does not resolve the issue still, your last step of elevating is to go to the district attorney, and that would be the criminal court for judgment enforcement. And that would be, say, for example, you went to civil court or mediation, and you got a judgment against them. They didn't pay it. The district attorney can help you with judgment enforcement. Also, there are additional things on here, but hopefully you never have to do them. But, that would be like the FBI if there's fraud and things like that, or the district attorney's office would hopefully do that so you wouldn't have to do that, because that's really a whole nother level. So do you see how we have exhausted every possible remedy before we get to the top, the highest step of the elevation? And this is the type of procedure that you need to have as a brokerage owner instead of getting emotional and, suing somebody. So your agent should never go directly to civil court and file a claim. They should always go through you, and then you take it down these steps, the attorney, the realtor association. So everybody on the other side of the coin should have sufficient opportunity to resolve this. They should be given the benefit of the doubt until they are, don't respond or their evidence proves that they're wrong. And then in that case, you can keep moving forward. But I would say in the spirit of cooperation that we should attempt to negotiate and resolve as many issues internally as possible. And I know it's not always possible, but really, remember, once you get to this level of realtor association, right, filing a claim in court, going to the state licensing, guess what? By that point, the world is watching. And you, as a brokerage owner and as a brokerage, are judged on what people see in public. So if you could resolve this before having to go that far, it would be to everybody's benefit. And honestly, think about it. If your agent was on the other side of the coin, if your agent was causing a problem, wouldn't you as a brokerage owner want to know about it first and try to resolve that internally with your agent and then get back with the other broker? You would appreciate that opportunity. So again, this is the procedure for elevating conflicts and disputes, resolving them, and giving everybody the benefit of the doubt and the correct elevation of it. Okay, so now we looked at co-op agent versus agent. There's 5 other scenarios. I don't have time to go through them all one by one, but I will tell you, we'll just go through them very, very briefly. The next situation is interoffice agent versus agent. This is where 2 of your agents within the same office are having a conflict. They're not getting along, and whether it's a commission dispute or a client dispute, this needs to be resolved as well. The next one is an interoffice agent versus broker. Okay, so that would be your agent in your office was having a conflict with you, I guess, are having a conflict with an agent in your office. And so this could also involve going to the franchise company. Okay. And the next one is inter-office broker versus agent. And again, if you have a franchise company, you want to bring them into the conversation as well, have them have the opportunity to give their input and give you guidance. Then we have agent versus client. So in this particular one, your agent, say for example, your agent represents the buyer and they're having a problem with their client who would be the buyers. And so this gives you the proper elevation for that instead of just, filing a lawsuit against your client. And the last one that we're going to review is client versus client. I mean, this is probably the worst situation that you could have. And this is where you, as a brokerage owner, you have two clients and your two clients are having a conflict with each other. Carl. Sorry for the interruption, guys. Sorry, had a little background noise here. Okay, so in this situation, this is something that you never ever as a brokerage owner want to happen. Your buyer and your seller are suing each other, and guess who's right in the middle? Going to get every single lawsuit possible, every single negative thing thrown at you for whatever thing they allege happened, and you're going to feel like you're right in the middle because you're going to be probably sued and blamed on both sides. Okay, the easiest way to get into this type of dispute or problem is to be a dual agency where you're representing both buyer and seller, because this is what could happen. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have dual agency and represent both, but again, if you have in your company one agent representing one party, you want to have a different agent representing the other party if possible. Okay, so this is like the worst case scenario for you as a brokerage owner. And again, this is a dispute that you would have to resolve before you were able to move forward. But hopefully you're such a great negotiator, right? That's part of our training we do as real estate salespeople. We're great at negotiation. So by the time you become a broker, you're great at negotiation and you can negotiate all of this to be able to, resolve it and get everybody happy and have a win-win resolution before we go to the attorney and the court and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And that's when your E&O insurance would kick in too, right? Now let's talk a little bit about the conversation for. So you do have to have that all-important conversation with your agent, who is being seen as the bad apple by all your other agents. So what do you do? Well, I suggest not sending them an email with this information, scheduling a time, sit down and meet with that person. Talk to that person first, have a good attitude, smile, give them the benefit of the doubt, and be kind to that person. Allow your agent to save face by, saying, well, I realize things happen. And, if I was in that situation, I would appreciate if somebody listened to me and gave me the benefit of that doubt also. So always be kind. Even if they did something that's horrible for your brokerage, be kind to the person. The next step is stay with the facts. right? It's not about your feelings. It's not about drama. It's not about he said, she said. Stick to the facts that happen that you can prove that are in writing. For example, here is our procedure for XYZ. You did not follow the procedure because here is what happened. And as a result of you not following the procedure, here's how it impacted our brokerage. And here is the situation we're now in that has to be resolved. And then be sure to elevate it. I just showed you a protocol that you could use to elevate the situation and resolve it. So go ahead and use that. Remember to always keep your communication records organized. That's why I don't like text message. It's nearly impossible for you and the other brokers to get that information after the fact, but email is perfectly okay. As a matter of fact, email is a good way to document things if you have an organized system on your email, which I do, and hopefully you do too. And lastly, remember to always show respect for people. Okay, so that means that regardless of what the person has done or their attitude, we're not going to treat them poorly, even if they're treating others poorly. You're going to model the type of behavior that you expect to see in them. The important thing is never attack people. People make mistakes. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So if you can make it less about the person and more about the facts and the situation, that will put everybody in a better place. It will also make your agent less defensive and less feeling like they're attacked and they need to react or do something, crazy or, run out the door and never come back. So don't let people feel like they're being attacked. So you shouldn't attack people, and don't let others at your brokerage attack people too. It could easily turn into a type of bullying, even if that person did something wrong, right? So again, let's go over what not to do. Here's what not to do when you have a situation where you need to confront one of your agents or resolve a conflict. The first thing not to do is passive aggressive behavior. Now we see that rampant in our real estate industry, all over social media, where people complain and gossip about everybody, but the one person that they have the beef with, they never go to that person and try to resolve it. Instead they gossip to everybody else. They spread rumors. Please don't do that. Be a mature person and go to that person. And again, as a brokerage owner, I'm sure you are doing that. You wouldn't be in your position if you if you had this type of immature behavior. But our agents often are stuck in this immature behavior pattern and cycle. And so we need to break that by modeling better behavior to them. Okay, the next one is don't attack people on social media. Please. They could use that against you. It could be slander. It could be libel. And the worst part about it is it makes you look bad. When you attack somebody else on social media or when you say something negative about them, it says less about them and more about you. And is that how you want your brokerage to be represented? Remember, whatever's on Facebook stays on Facebook forever and ever. So email, social media, anything that's in writing, somebody will save that and use it against you later. Another thing not to do is don't disparage companies. You may not like your firm down the street. You may not like their behavior. But again, part of our realtor code of ethics, I know most of us are realtors, or if you're not a realtor, you still should be held to those same standards of we don't talk bad about other companies. And we know that from our training, our ethics training, right? Don't contact the other agent's client. again, you as a brokerage owner, you go broker to broker and let that broker talk to their agent and their agent's client. Another thing not to do is don't elevate out of order. Don't ignore the protocol. I just gave you a series of steps to go through to elevate situations and help negotiate them to a successful, harmonious resolution with all parties. Be sure to follow that and get it resolved if you can before you have to elevate it all the way. But if you do have to elevate, follow the correct steps. Another thing not to do, no immature, emotional behavior. What does that mean? Name calling, tattletelling, bullying, cursing, screaming, yelling. I mean, that's just third grade behavior. As brokerage owners, we're in a position of respect. We're in a position of authority and leadership. We don't do that. And if our agents do that, we don't accept it from them either. Okay. I know you're probably saying, oh, what brokerage owner would do that? What manager would do that? Okay, it does happen. I have to tell you how much time do we have left? I have to tell you an experience. I went into an office and it was I think it was a mortgage lender. I went in to meet one of their lenders. I was sitting in the waiting room and I could hear their manager in the back screaming and cursing at one of their mortgage lenders. And it was horrible. And I just really wanted to walk out of there. I waited until the guy came back out. It could have been him that was being yelled at. I don't know, but I felt really uncomfortable. And I did bring it up and he sort of dismissed it. And I finished the conversation and got myself out of there as quick as I could because it was just a very toxic environment that I didn't want to be in for more time than I had to. So yes, it does happen. But again, we need to elevate ourselves to a higher standard as brokerage owners. And again, never threaten anybody, never be violent, and never tolerate that behavior from anybody at your company, including your vendors or your clients, or co-op agents. So again, that's what not to do. I think you already know all that, but it doesn't hurt to go over it. So when you do have to sit down and talk with this agent who's causing issues at your company, remember to conduct yourself professionally, regardless of what anybody else does. If people are getting out of hand, it's time to end the meeting, right? And everybody can go their separate way, but you don't need to continue putting yourself in a position where other people are mistreating you either. Now, whatever decision you make, remember the world is watching. As I said, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but what happens on Facebook and email stays there forever and ever and ever and ever, and it never goes away. So whatever you do publicly or with people watching will come back to haunt you if it's not a good decision. And if you did make a bad decision that people see, remember you do need to apologize to those same people and make amends. So calculate the cost of this. It could be your cost is time, headache, stress, finances, reputation, your peace of mind, family, relationships, future business, and the perceived look of your company. Always show integrity. We answer to a higher authority. Regardless of other people and who they're accountable, we are accountable to ourselves, to our agents, our families, and a higher authority, so we don't have to worry about other people that don't, have integrity, because we do, right? All right, second part here is the termination forms and the process. Do you have a termination process? Let's go ahead and take a little poll here. And our poll is going to be, Reset poll. There we go. Do you have a termination process? And our questions are A, yes, we have written procedures. B, no, we handle on a case-by-case basis. Or C, we're going to put a system in place, and that's why you're here today, which is awesome. Okay, anybody go ahead and you can just type it into the chat, or you can just answer the poll. Either way is good. Just making some notes for myself. Okay, let's see if we got some questions here. Okay, we are going to put a system in place. All right, great job. Good job, everybody. And that is the first step to your procedures, is recognizing that you have a need for them and getting some forms together. So let's talk about those forms. You don't want to let a rotten apple spoil the entire barrel, as we talked about earlier. So first of all, you want to attempt to resolve the situation as we showed. But if your agent is still not aligning with your values, what you can do is purge your company of the toxic attitudes 2 ways. Number 1 is either probation, perhaps suspending the agent, putting them on probation for a while, or number 2 is termination. Okay, so that second choice, termination, could happen right away, or you could choose to put your agent on probation for a while, and then if they're not, give them some tasks to do. If they don't finish the tasks, then they get terminated. Now, an example of that, I have a brokerage owner friend, and what he does if his agents are, not meeting the requirement, or there's an issue with them, what they do is they require their agent to go to some training and educational courses, and they have to sign in writing that they agree to go to these courses, and then they have to take notes and report back on what they learned. So that is something that could be part of a probationary period, right? Okay, so termination, and most agents are terminated due to a values conflict. We talked about that earlier. If there is something very serious that is jeopardizing your brokerage, fire them quickly before the toxic attitude spreads. They say, hire slow, fire quickly. And we don't always like to do that because, as I said, we want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And often these agents have become our friends or like family over the years. But after you do terminate, you want to have an exit interview and follow your correct procedures in your office. A system, right? What does system stand for? Save yourself stress, time, energy, money. So with best business practices, you want to have a written policies and procedures handbook, and you want to have one for agents and one for operations internally with your leadership team. And then you also need to have best business practices. So if that's tracking, measuring, benchmarking, and corporate protocol. The important thing is to have processes in place that everybody knows they can follow, because you can put on automatic pilot and step 1, step 2, step 3, and your assistant can actually complete a lot of that for you and take the load off your shoulders with the system. So the system would involve, for agent termination, it would involve forms and paperwork. It would involve their last paycheck, or should we call it final paycheck, and number 3, the exit interview. So we'll go over number 1 and number 3 in just a minute. And we're probably going to run a little over an hour today, maybe an extra 10 minutes or so. Okay, so some of the forms are the associate probation form, the termination checklist, the termination form, the exit interview, and the contract cancellation. Now you can see in this one I call them associate because when they come to our company, we call them associates because they could be agents, they could be brokers, but again, you want to have some forms ready and in place. So these are some of our sample forms. This one on the top left you see is called the performance probation period. And in this probation, you want to say the reason why. And to get off probation, they must do X, Y, and Z. Now, for example, that could be attending a training class on a particular topic within the next 30 days. The consequence, they might get moved from a different level if they're at a certain compensation level at your company. And it could be everybody sort of acknowledges this. They have to sign, and then when you take them off probation, you sign again. It could be also probation based on lack of sales. So say, for example, you have a minimum number of sales, 2 per month, 3 per quarter, whatever it is. Your agent didn't meet that. They go on probation for the next month or 2 months, and they have to do certain activities, lead generating activities, a certain number of activities every day, a certain number of hours every week to get off of that probation. And hopefully that will help them as well. And if they don't complete it, still don't have any sales, then bye-bye. Okay, the next form is an associate termination request. And in this particular form, you would want to list the reasons that they were terminated, if they would consider returning, which we'll talk about at the end of today's session. And if they did leave already, where they're going to, what leads they have that they have been generated by the brokerage that you need to make sure you pull back, what listings that they secured, if those listings are going with them to the new brokerage or not, and transactions in escrow, which are most likely going to stay with your brokerage, and you need to list out what they are, and then this goes in their file. Now I'm showing a piece of paper here. Of course, this doesn't have to be on a printed paper. You could easily do it on electronic medium using digital documents. Here's a couple more forms. This is an associate termination checklist. And again, these are things that your assistant can do. Remove the license from the sales licensing bureau, remove the MLS membership, remove the realtor membership, remove them from your birthday card list, your monthly newsletter, your office roster, your training systems, all of these things. Change the phone extension, change the email, reroute them back to your brokerage firm. So again, these are steps that need to be completed. Also, that's the first thing, and those are just administrative tasks. The second part are your financial reconciliation. So you want to go through and reconcile their income and expense and fees owed to the brokerage for that particular agent. You want to reconcile their commissions, referral fees, any bonuses owed to the agent so that you can pay them their final paycheck. And within 3 business days, you want to contact them, and then within 7 days, issue a paycheck. Now, there might be laws in your state about giving employees a paycheck on their last day. We'll talk about that in just a minute because, again, these are independent contractors, not employees. Okay. And then, of course, there's a section on here where you would reassign any leads to a different agent, any leads that were generated by the brokerage to the terminating agent. And lastly, we have a form called the Associate Exit Interview, where you, as a brokerage owner or your manager, would sit down with the agent and have them talk to them and have them rate you in various areas, which we're going to go over in just a minute. And also at the end, the agent that's departing has the opportunity to give any comments, talk about whether they've gained knowledge and skills at your brokerage, and what they're unsatisfied with and what they're satisfied with at your brokerage. And again, a lot of this you can delegate. The one thing that cannot be delegated is a personal relationship, sitting down with the departing agent and talking with them one-to-one. Okay, but all the other tasks can likely be delegated. Excuse me. Okay, now we have the exit interview. Do you interview exiting agents? Let's put the little poll up here. Do you interview exiting agents? A, yes, if they leave on good terms. B, we ask all departing agents for feedback. C, no, we do not. Now, I know most of us are probably in category C, but I would encourage you to try getting feedback from every agent that leaves, whether they leave on good terms or bad terms. Now, if they leave on bad terms, they'll most likely have some constructive criticism for you of things that they don't like, that you did wrong, and that they're blaming you for. I would say take that with a grain of salt, but where can you improve? Okay, so we've got to get this feedback to know where we can improve. Okay, if you have your answer to the poll, you can just go ahead and type it into the chat bar there. What is the purpose of an exit interview? Well, first of all, we want to gain insight through feedback. We want to be able to track the statistics of what's happening in the company, and getting the feedback from our departing agents helps us to do that, because again, these are people who are familiar with your system and they have chosen to no longer be affiliated with you. So in many ways, their feedback is critical, and it's what I want to say is sort of untainted. It's raw, because they're going to tell you what's needed at your company, and you probably don't want to hear it, but you need to. Another reason for an exit interview is to discover what the agent's motives are when they leave. Now, you might know where they're going to another brokerage, but that doesn't tell you internally what their motive is, and an exit interview can do that. And lastly, it's so important as part of our culture to honor people, to respect them, to value people. And when you take the time to sit down with somebody, even if they're leaving and they're unhappy with their brokerage or you're unhappy with them, when you sit down with them, everybody else sees, right? We said the world is watching, and they know that your culture is that you care about people. You didn't boot them out the door, right? Unless this is a person who just went MIA, they went missing in action, and they never communicated back for weeks and weeks and months. So you might have had to box up their stuff and send it to their home address or something. But in general, when you offer people that opportunity to come in and talk with you, and they know that you care, it shows the other agents you care, number one. And number two, how many of us know that agents that leave often come back again? It's like that boomerang. They leave because they think the grass is green on the other side. They get over there, they find out it's not. And if you have made that person feel welcome, they will come back again. Now, if you had a bad attitude when they left, they're probably going to go to another brokerage and then another one, right? So think about that a little bit. So some possible interview questions. We saw the interview form. These are your areas for possible improvement. Your management, mentoring, your lead generation, income opportunities for the agents, tools, technology, teamwork and communication, training, education, overall. So these are areas that you need to gauge and find out what your agents think about you. Now, the poll, you could also use it for existing agents at your brokerage, not just departing agents, because wouldn't it be wonderful to know what they think about this? In our society, we're very, polite. If we have a problem with somebody, we don't talk to them because we think it's polite not to tell them. But then we go gossip to everybody else. So we need to put an end to that by coming to the agents directly and asking them, what do you think? What do you say? What are you finding? And how can we help improve to know that we're making this the best environment for you and the best culture possible? And you become a culture of caring and a culture of improvement, because people know even if something's wrong, you're going to fix it because you care. Even if something isn't working out right, guess what? You have a system for working to improve it, and you will work on it until you get it right. And that becomes part of your culture. So again, here's the exit interview form that we talked about just a minute ago. And this is meant to be, you don't send this to the agent, you sit down and talk with them face to face, right? So how do you conduct the interview? Who does that at your company? I think it's best for you as a brokerage owner to sit down and conduct the interview. If you want to delegate it, you can. Make sure that person is a manager, a C-level employee, a director, or somebody at a higher level who will be conducting the interview with them. Again, we talked about the interview and its importance and why you need to speak with them face to face if possible. Again, you want to speak tactfully to your agents, even if they're departing. Be kind to them. Stick to the facts. Smile, and most importantly, don't get upset. I know it feels like a personal blow. It's hard not to take it personal when you've invested in that agent. You've spent time training them, mentoring them, covering for them, fixing their problems, solving crisis, making sure they get paid the most money possible, giving them your personal leads, and you feel very vested in that agent. And it's hard when they leave, whether they're leaving out of their own accord or you're having to ask them to leave. So try not to get upset and let your emotions come to the front, but be kind, be polite, and you can let them know that you're unhappy they're leaving. But again, you don't want to get upset to the point that you're not using good judgment in the way you conduct your behavior with the agent. All right, now we're going to talk about what happens after the separation. What happens when your agent is gone? We don't just wave a magic wand and poof, it's all over. There are things that need to happen, right? So here are some of the things. How do you handle these? Transactions are in progress. How do you handle that? The agent asks you for a letter of recommendation. Do you give it or not? You get a reference check from an employer about your agent, and they're going to be leaving you. What do you say? The agent who's leaving you has slandered you on social media. How do you respond? What if the agent that you're firing is actually the subject of a lawsuit or a complaint against your brokerage? So how do you continue to deal with that? And last but not least, what about returning agents who are coming back? So for the transactions in progress, let's hope that your brokerage firm already has policies on how to deal with that, and that you signed an agreement with your agent in writing about whether they can take or leave their transactions. Again, there are 3 areas to deal with. So leads generated by the brokerage, listings that are not in escrow, they're just active listings, and that would apply to buyers too. And number 3 is active transactions in progress. So how do you deal with all of these things? That would be governed by your policies and procedures manual and by the contract or agreement that you signed with your agents, which should be fair across the board for every agent, and the same thing applied to every agent, fairly and equally. Okay? So again, this doesn't get handled at the point of separation. This should have already been handled or planned for earlier. Now, some agents may ask you for a letter of recommendation for various things, perhaps for their next employer or their next broker, or maybe they need it for a committee they're going to be on or whatever. I would encourage you to go ahead and write that letter of recommendation and say the best things that you can about that agent, unless this is an agent that is maybe causing you a lawsuit. I don't know that I would want to write a letter, but other than that, assuming they're just a regular agent who is no longer going to be at your brokerage, you can actually go ahead and write them a letter of recommendation for the even leave and put it on your letterhead, and that will reflect very well on you and your company, because you're building goodwill and culture by saying something positive about someone else. Remember, that agent may return later, and you may want them to return unless this is an agent who has maybe, wronged you by stealing your accounts or, you know, done something that you really don't want them to return later. As a matter of fact, you would never have them come back. But other than that, I would go ahead and write a letter of recommendation without them even asking you for it and send them to you. And they'll probably feel guilty about leaving too, right? I know at Christmas, we had our annual brokerage Christmas party, and I bought something nice for each of my agents. I bought them a really nice binder. It was like a folio pad. They could put their iPad in it and use it out in the field, and it had some really cool little features and some little tech things with it. And I just appreciated my agents so much and wanted them to have something nice to help them do even better in their job. One of my agents called me and she said, and by the way, she is just the sweetest person ever. And she said, Regina, I hate to let you know, but I'm leaving. I'm going to another brokerage. And I feel that they better support where I'm moving to with my career. And honestly, I was happy for her because I agree with her. That agent was more supportive and more centrally located in her geographic area and could serve her better because she was really starting to get to a point in her career now because of my mentoring and training where she was ready to go to the next level. And that brokerage would be more equipped and positioned to be able to help her do that. So I was not upset with her at all, and I wished her good luck. And before we hung up, she said to me, Regina, I just want to thank you for the really nice Christmas gift that you sent me, but I feel I should send it back to you. And she actually felt guilty because I had sent her this nice gift and she was quitting. And I told her, no, you keep that gift. The gift is not to entice you to stay in the future, although it probably was a little bit, right? I said the gift is actually for your past performance of the work you've done at our brokerage and just to show our appreciation of how much we appreciate you and to help you be successful in the future. So again, if you have that kind of attitude, I mean, she and I, we have stayed friends. We've seen each other's career grow. We've continued to, be supportive of each other. So again, extend the olive branch, or the olive leaf, be the first one to take that initiative and ask them if they'd like a letter written. The next thing is a reference check. So what do you say when another broker calls you, when an employer calls you, when anybody calls you? Okay, so generally we have two types of agents, right? We have the agents who are employees and the agents who are independent contractors. And for those who are over here, the employees, there are specific rules that we have to follow. So make sure you have your attorney on call, ask your attorney, have written procedures. In many states, all you're allowed to say is to verify their dates of employment. And that's it. You can't talk about whether you liked them or not, their performance at the company. So be careful of that. Now, for an agent who's an independent contractor, that may be different, or it may not. They may still be considered an employee, and that varies by state. So be sure to ask your attorney. Always follow your office procedures. And by the way, I would not give out dates of employment to just any old random person. I would ask that person to send me a letter or an email so I could confirm that person's authority before I just speak about my previous agent. Okay, hope that answers some questions there. Social media slander. Unfortunately, we see way too much of that nowadays. But your reputation is paramount for your company. You don't want to be slandered on social media, a little tongue twister there. So you might have to have your attorney write a cease and desist letter to that person. That's what you do behind the scenes. But in the forum where everybody's watching, the eyes are on you, what are you going to do now? Do two things. Number one, answer with a good attitude. Whether or not you like that person, you're not answering for them. You're answering for the hundreds, thousands, or millions of other people who are going to come in and see their negative Yelp review and what you said about it, right? So having a good attitude means saying, John, thank you for sharing with us, and we appreciated you when you were an agent here. I'm sorry that some of these things weren't resolved to your satisfaction, but as you remember, we did work with you 3 different times to resolve this, and we gave you every opportunity, and hopefully in the future things work out in your career. Good luck to you, blah blah blah, right? That would be a good example. And the second thing that you want to do with social media is you want to try to bury those online posts that you can't get rid of with your attorney's cease and desist letter, and burying them by posting a lot of other really good stuff, and eventually the negative will go to the bottom. Okay. What about lawsuits or complaints in progress? Okay, this is a sticky issue, because if you have an agent that is being sued and they are named in the brokerage they're named in the lawsuit as well as your brokerage, you would like to have an attorney to review the contracts, document everything in writing, and then you're going to send a letter to the agent. Now, if this agent got me into a lawsuit, I would probably fire them immediately, and then I would write something to that effect and let the people in the lawsuit know that this agent no longer works for your company. Now, if they no longer work there, you probably still have to deal with the agent, because they're probably either named in the lawsuit, or the realtor complaint, or your brokerage is named and you still have to get the facts from them. So make sure you have their new mailing address, send all correspondence to their home address. And if they have a new brokerage, maybe they took their license and went somewhere else, you might need to notify the new brokerage about what's going on. Again, without your judgment, without your personal take on it or your emotional, upset. Just let them know about some of the facts as little as possible. It should not be gossiping, but just broker to broker as a courtesy that their new broker may need to be aware of, because it will obviously impact them as well. And then the last thing is, how do you collect? So you have an agent that made a mistake. You had to go to court or use your E&O insurance and expend money on their behalf. How do you collect? Well, hopefully you already have that as part of your independent contract agreement, that if they have caused a certain problem, they're responsible to pay you, and you could either get a judgment against them or send them an invoice. But the second thing is, how do you collect that money? Because they no longer work for your brokerage. They're not going to be closing any more transactions. So that might be something to figure out what their source of income is, and try to work with them and get them to pay you willingly instead of having to pursue court means. That's always the best thing to do. And last, what about those returning agents? Never, ever burn bridges in our industry. Even in this San Diego area, there's like 40,000 real estate licensees. 20,000 of them are in our MLS systems. So you would think, oh, wow, there's so many agents. It doesn't matter, if I burn bridge by being mean and rude to one or another. But that's not true, because even in our small industry, there are a few dozen top agents that are active, and they know each other. And guess what? They have a lot of listings, And if you have your buyer who wants to make an offer on so-and-so's listing, and you got into a beef with that agent when they left, that's probably not going to happen, that your buyer's offer will be accepted. So again, leave the door open for those agents who are honest and have integrity. Leave the door open for them to return again, and make sure that they feel welcome. The last thing is to have a positive attitude. Don't feel discouraged when an agent leaves. It's easy to get down on yourself, but instead look for the silver lining. The silver lining is now, maybe that agent, you were having to spend a lot of time solving a lot of their crises and issues and problems. But now with that agent gone, you have 5 extra hours per week and a lot less stress, and you can actually take a mini getaway vacation this weekend, right? So that could be a silver lining. Just remember that I call it one of the laws of nature is that voids are always filled. And that means when you let one agent go, you have an empty void that will soon be filled by another agent, another great agent. So just remember, your next top agent is only one recruiting appointment away. So that's why we always have to be recruiting, contacting agents, reaching out to them, setting those appointments. The other thing I would say is to examine and implement the feedback. When your agent leaves, they might be unhappy with your company. And even though their words might sting, we have to look and see and examine what little speck of truth there might be to it, or what big, huge, piece of truth there might be with their feedback that's critical of us. And how can we look at ourselves internally and look at our brokerage procedures to get better and make sure that that doesn't happen again? What can we implement based on that can help us grow and be stronger and do an even better job with our next few agents and keep good agents? Okay, and then the last thing I want to say is, to maintain your positive attitude, when you're having that talk with the agents and letting them know that it's time for them to leave, make it a win-win for them. It's not just about, oh, you're horrible, so we're letting you go, but it's about, we don't see eye to eye here on our mission and our values. And by releasing you, we're allowing you to find a better opportunity that is more suitable and more compatible to your working style and allows you to prosper and grow onto the next step. Because here you would be stuck because, you're not honoring our culture. You don't fit into our culture here. And so by releasing you, we think you have better opportunities elsewhere, and that could really help you to move to the next level. Okay, again, so make it a win-win. Let them know why it's best not just for you to fire them, but for them to leave and you to release them so they have other opportunities and better things in their future that align more with their mission and their vision. So I know we went a little over time here, but I know we can all remember that the bottom line is always be recruiting. Always be recruiting. That's the answer to 99% of your woes at your brokerage. Any questions? I'll just open it up for questions if anybody has any. If not, remember to review our series, Build Your Brokerage Empire, 12 courses, online access, activity worksheets, bonus content, lots of good stuff in there. If you already have it, be sure to take the time to go through it. If not, consider getting it now. Thank you, brokers, for being here today, learning how to recruit and retain top talent, scout, sign, and play the right agents at your brokerage firm. That's what we learned about today. Actually, today's topic was about termination, and I know that that is a painful topic, but it's necessary to deal with because as a brokerage owner, we can't just be hiring, we have to be firing too. So there's two parts to that process. So definitely, yeah, it's not the most pleasant topic, but it's a necessary part of business, and you're a business owner. So we have the courage to make those challenging decisions. And as a result, our whole entire company prospers and grows. Any closing questions or comments here, everybody, as I say goodbye? Okay, lastly, in closing, I do want to mention that this is my very last Wealthy Wednesday webinar. We are no longer going to have webinars on Wednesday. We are going to be looking at a different date and time. I am not sure at this point when, but we do have some other really great things planned for you in the future with our forms, our kits, our leadership interviews. We have a series on your business plan and how to do that yourself. A lot of great stuff happening here. So be sure to stay tuned. MBA Broker Consultants. Peace out. Love you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.